My name is Pullaro, and I'm here speaking for myself and my deceased husband, Samuel Lopez. He was a soft-hearted person, and he adopted everything that dog or cat or horse that was sick and needed a home. A humane officer showed up saying that she had got an anonymous call that we had a thin horse on the property, referring to this one that these people that on their way to Texas had just dropped off. And we had her pinned right up against the highway, and so everybody could see her. So I thought, well, it was legitimate. But she asked for my husband by name. So I asked her, I said, oh, do you know Sam? And she said, well, I heard the name, and I thought maybe I knew him from high school, but I wanted to see what he looked like. But I don't know how she knew his name. It kind of stuck in my mind. She went through the entire property, went into the barn. She put in her report. I showed her the receipt that the gentleman had wrote. The horse had been there less than 3 weeks, and that we had it in a pen. She checked. I had put in 3 bales of hay, and daily I'd throw in more. So the horse was just eating as much as she could possibly eat, plus grain in the morning. She wrote on the report, and I saw her write it. I sat there with her while she wrote it, that everything was fine. All the tanks were full of water. They all had heaters in them. She went into the barn where we had our hay stored, and she wrote in her report there was too much hay to count, and all the horses were quiet. She told me when she left that she would be back in 6 months to check on the horses. Within the next 3 weeks, this Brett Smith started showing up, and he never left my backyard. He sat there like he was my best friend, talked to me about the horses, who's papered, who's not, who's trained, who's working good, who's cattle, who does trail, who does shows, how much are they worth. And I explained to him that we had the rescue horses out there and what we've been through and what we were trying to do with them. He then said he wanted to have a vet come out. So Sam called Dr. Leone in Fowler, who was his vet. And Dr. Leone said, I've booked up doing this stuff, but I'll be out next week. So Sam called Brett back and said, you know, Landy's going to come out next week and everything will be fine. Brett said he didn't want to wait a week to have Leone come out, that he wanted us to call Dr. Heyman, which is a mobile veterinarian. Now, this is the worst winter of 2007 that we've had in 30 years. And if you guys remember all the TV crews where all these animals are laying dead everywhere, this was a really hard winter to keep weight on anything that was out. I'm not talking horses in a barn. I'm talking open range livestock. Dr. Heyman came out, and I had pulled, in the meantime, some gal had come and bought this little horse that she was going to take and make a pet out of. So the one that they came out to see was gone. I had pulled in a mare that did not belong to us. We had boarding. They had 4 horses they were boarding. And the gentleman had had a heart attack and was in a coma. And they hadn't paid us in 5 months for the boarding, nor the vet bills that I pulled in their old horse that was worse than some of the other ones, and just because she was old, and then a young horse that was in worse shape because he was young. And one of the hunting horses that had come back from hunting camp that we were treating for sand collie. The vet called Brett Smith and told him that he floated the old mare's teeth and he had the young one on some penicillin and everything was fine. Our horses didn't look any worse than anybody else's open range horses at that time. 3 days later, on a holiday weekend, 8 people from the Humane Society came out with 2 sheriff's officers and took all the horses that were papered, not the rescues that were sick and dying. They took everything that was papered and that I had said was worth some money. They were very uneducated, had no idea about horses. Some of the horses I had fed that morning already. They had alfalfa down in the pens. The horses were eating, and some of them had got full eating the alfalfa and had gone back out to a sweet grass winter wheat field that we had planted. They took some coffee cans with grain, went down to the bottom field to get these horses in. They started shaking the grain cans at the horses, who immediately came at a run. These people had no clue what they were doing. They panicked when they saw saw the horses running for them, and they took off running as fast as they could back into the pen. I have pregnant mares that are due any time. The one in particular was Shira, who Sam had palpated the night before, and he said she's due any minute now. Well, Shira came running in, and when she got into the pen, she collapsed, breathing very hard and in labor. This person who has no business being around the horse went screaming across the pen, waving her arms wildly, kicking dirt in his horse's face, screaming at the top of her lungs, "Oh, look, they're dying in front of us." The horse tried to get up, twisted herself, staggered several 3 times, finally got to her feet and took off to get safety out in the pasture, and she ran into the other horses coming in. She went down, and we ended up putting 7 stitches in her leg after they left her bleeding and took the other horses that were paper. They couldn't catch half the horses, and even when they brought them in the pen, they chased them around. Another horse, Jetter, brown gilding, ended up having a puncture wound in his shoulder, which we had to stitch. There was this rescue, which was a freeze-branded Mustang, and I begged and I pleaded with him to quit chasing her because you couldn't catch her. She went through a panel that she destroyed. She went through 3 fences, tore everything down, and they finally just said, "Oh, just let her go." They only graded the horses they wanted to take, and by the time they got to the vet, they graded them below a 3, because they said they could only take horses that are graded lower than a 3. So they graded them lower than a 3, but the vet's office graded them at 3s and above, except the 2 that we had the vet working on. Out of the 7 they took, 4 of them did not belong to us. They handed them over to the people that owned them that hadn't paid us any money or because of problems they had. Just gave them the horses with the promise that they would never have anything to do with us again. They filed charges against my husband and myself. The bond was not $10 a day, and I don't have the paperwork. I've looked everywhere to find it. I believe it was $450 a month. They had 7 of the horses they were charging us for. This is spring, and as farmers, there's no way in spring you can come up with any money except to get your crops in the ground. We grow hay, so for us, and oats and wheat, so we have feed for the horses that don't cost us any money. There was no way we could come up with the bond money. And in addition to the bond money, we had to have papers in our name for the horses that we wanted to get back, which we didn't have.
Ms. Pullaro, I appreciate the heartfelt nature of your testimony here today, but I was wondering if we have a lot of witnesses signed up, and I was just
So we could just go on ahead and tell how Sam was working to get the money.
We were given tickets and told we were looking at 12 years in prison apiece. We needed $40,000 for attorney's fees to keep ourselves out of jail. Sam had to take on a 3rd job. Now we farm, I sell insurance in the wintertime, and Sam sold chemical to the farmers. He picked up another job, which is a 400-acre spot on top of a mountain outside of the city, working nights, and he died. They finally dropped the charges against Sam and came at me with all the charges. I fought with them for another 1.5 years. Now I got a public defender because I have no money and no husband and no income, and they dropped the charges. They told me at that time if I wanted my 3 horses back, that they didn't give back the 3 that were Sam's, that I have to hire a civil lawyer, pay for it myself, and when I hired that civil lawyer, they were going to come back and sue Sam's estate for $100,000. They have been harassing me ever since. They come all the time and they spy on me. They sit on the highway with binoculars. They sit up on the overpass with photo lens cameras.
Who is they?
The Humane Society.